in the time of attack, every second is important, and you have to decide things without all the information and to have the ability to lead the situation while there is an enemy on the other side against you. So it's a kind of mind war you have to win.
Welcome to the CISO Signal, a true cybercrime podcast. I'm Jeremy Ladner. On this episode, we step inside the breach that shattered illusions of security at the highest levels. A routine software update to 18,000 organizations became a Trojan horse for a nation-state campaign that infiltrated the U.S. Treasury, the Department of Justice, Microsoft, and dozens more. The cost? Billions of dollars in cleanup, years of investigation, and the hard-won wisdom that solutions we trust to protect us could be turned against us. This is the story of SolarWinds. And joining us for the investigation is a cybersecurity titan with decades of experience at the highest levels. Alberto Deto Hassan is VP and CISO at ICL Group and formerly headed Israel's national CERT. He brings deep experience across IT, OT, and critical infrastructure security. Alberto, welcome to the CISO Signal. Can you tell us a bit more about your background?
Okay, I'm married to Ruth. She is my wife. That's the most important. I have 3 kids. I came from the ISA, Israeli Security Agency, and then after the Israeli Security Agency, I created and opened the national CERT, and afterwards I came back as a CISO to ICL. So I'm the last 6 years, I'm VP of Cybersecurity Defense in ICL.
Alberto, it's great to have you with us. Now, let's begin the investigation. We are in the midst of a ceaseless war, not of bombs or bullets, but of breaches, firewalls, and silent incursions. The targets? Our borders, our banks, our commerce, and the critical infrastructure that underpins a free civilization. The enemy is cloaked in code, fueled by greed, glory, and a desire for chaos. This is the story of the unseen protectors, the nameless generals, the CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers. They are the guardians at the gate, the watchers on the wall, ever vigilant and always listening for the CISO signal. How we perceive the passage of time is a strange thing. Seconds can stretch on endlessly, each moment dragging like an eternity, and yet years can seemingly pass in the blink of an eye. Looking back, they feel like echoes from a parallel world, a lifetime that almost doesn't feel like our own. The early spring of 2020 feels recent enough to touch, and yet impossibly far away. Back then, the world had come to a standstill. COVID-19 had forced much of the world to work from home. Office towers stood hollow, rush hours evaporated, and dining tables were hurriedly converted into makeshift workstations. We were all grappling with a new reality, working remotely, living cautiously. For the first time in generations, the global community began to contemplate the fragility of the systems that hold us together. A supply chain built on people who could get sick. What if the virus keeps spreading? If the people who pick the food, transport the fuel, keep the lights on, can't come to work? What if the police just don't show up? If the water doesn't flow? If the grid goes dark? It was a moment of collective vulnerability. And while most of us were worrying about a biological virus slipping past our defenses, few noticed something else creeping silently through another kind of supply chain. A virus of a different nature, crafted by human hands, intelligent, patient, precise. It didn't spread through the air. It traveled through trust. During that same spring of 2020, the enemy got in. It breached major government agencies, compromised Fortune 500 corporations, and it did so using a weapon no one saw coming. No, not COVID. Something arguably far worse. That sound you hear approaching is the blazing heat of this episode's breach. This is SolarWinds and the CISO Signal. So you mentioned your wife and kids earlier, and obviously family is very important to you. What's the one thing about a career in cybersecurity that you wish you knew way back when you started years ago?
Most of the attacks arrive on the weekend, never mind where you are. This is statistics. And on the weekend, you have to be more alerted, more close to the computer, more close to the system. And you have to understand that this is part of your job. If you are not prepared to it, don't do it. But if you are a CISO or like CISO, you have to be prepared to work on weekend.
So you've been at the helm of these large security organizations now for many years. Tell us a bit about the weight of that responsibility on your shoulders. What is that like?
I can say that every event, I understand responsibility on my shoulder, and I understand that I am part of the West world that would like to protect the industry, that would like to keep the industry, the Western industry, to be working and not to stop because of attacks that mainly organized crime that wants us to be stopped or to pay a lot of money.
So when we discuss a breach of this scale and this scope, we often focus on the size of the ransom paid or the cost of damages or the sensitive data stolen. What is the one element you think we overlook that we should be talking about?
First of all, the planning. Somebody planned it very well. Somebody made the preparation. The impact is huge. The impact is worldwide. So you have to give respect to who have done it. Respect, professional respect. And then to realize, to analyze it with a cold mind, what is the situation, what we should do more fast, and what we should do in medium time, and what we should do in more time. But you have to make decision-making process in a very fast way. Otherwise, you are doomed.
Okay, so that's sort of an interesting juxtaposition there that you mentioned between the slow and careful planning of the enemy and then the incredibly fast reaction time that a CISO needs when you're faced with a breach like this. How do you handle that?
I will say that every event is special with its own facts. You have to be ready to react and to react fast and to think fast, because you don't have time.
We love making this podcast, and we really hope that shows in the care and quality that we invest in it. And we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like and share it with your fellow security professionals, as well as dropping us a comment, letting us know what stories and guests you'd like to have on the podcast in future episodes. Now, back to the story. September 2019, before the world locked down, before the phrase supply chain attack sent shivers through boardrooms and war rooms alike, something began quietly, deliberately, far from the fluorescent glow of the corporate world. The cybersecurity landscape in late 2019 was, by all appearances, business as usual. Security teams hunted malware, patched vulnerabilities, and deployed firewalls, and slept well under the illusion that the systems they depended on were hardened, secure, and trustworthy. But trust in this story is the first lie, because somewhere halfway around the world, a patient adversary was already watching, studying, and waiting. The group would later be known by many names: UNC2452, Dark Halo, APT29. The U.S. government would eventually trace the operation back to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR. These weren't spray-and-pray hackers looking to make a quick buck. They were architects of espionage, disciplined, methodical, and state-backed. And in the fall of 2019, they picked their target, a little-known IT company called SolarWinds. Not because of what SolarWinds did, but because of who they served. Government agencies, Fortune 500 corporations, and critical infrastructure providers, the perfect Trojan horse. This wasn't just a heist, it was infiltration with intent, a long con. They began with reconnaissance, probing SolarWinds' digital perimeter, mapping their internal infrastructure, and identifying the cracks in the foundation. No malware, no alerts, just eyes in the dark, Because the plan wasn't to breach and escape, the plan was to become invisible, to live inside the trusted systems that others relied on for protection. And so, in the shadows of September 2019, the groundwork was laid, a digital casing of the joint, the beginning of one of the most devastating supply chain attacks in history. And no one saw it coming. All right, so there's that terrifying moment of realization when it is clear you've been breached. What is the first thing you do before you assemble the team, before you alert the necessary stakeholders? Right after that first moment of realization and confirmation, what does Alberto, Deto, Hassan do?
To pray is important. If you pray twice, it's even better. But after praying, you have to take consideration, check on small things. When you get an update from any company, never mind with Microsoft or whatever, check it on a small environment, closed environment. Give it 24 hours to see what is the outcome of this update. And if it's okay, then continue to medium size. And then continue to all size, but do not do it immediately, automatically, all over the way. That's the wisdom that we got from this event and many events like this. Don't be so fast in updating systems. Take into consideration that maybe somebody was smarter than you and may put something in this update.
Okay, so we are living in a post-SolarWinds reality now. How do you suggest teams validate, test, and monitor security tools like SolarWinds before full deployment and organization-wide exposure?
I will say that you have to test it in real threat and to see what is the outcome of false alarm. The issue of false alarm is very important. If there are many alarms that are not real alarm, it's like the sheep and the wolf. So you have to do two things. First of all, to see that it detects what it should detect, but the same importance that is not giving alert to something that is nothing. Otherwise, it's useless.
Act 2. The Silent Intrusion. It didn't look like a weapon. There was no explosion, no fanfare, no ransom note flashing across a locked screen. Instead, it arrived quietly, like a whisper, slipped between lines of trusted code. October 2019. Somewhere, on a keyboard inside a room we may never fully identify, a line of custom malware was compiled. Its given name? Sunspot. But this wasn't the kind of malware designed to smash and destroy. It was careful, calculated, designed to impersonate trust itself. Its job wasn't to detonate, it was to hide, to wait, to observe, and then to strike at the precise moment. Its target? Not a bank, not a hospital, a software company, SolarWinds. Specifically, its build environment, the digital assembly line where software updates are forged, tested, and blessed for distribution. That's where Sunspot was placed. Like a ghost on the production floor, it monitored for files related to SolarWinds' flagship product, Orion. And when the legitimate update was being compiled, Sunspot silently swapped in the infected version. No one noticed. Not the developers, not the QA testers, and not the security scanners. February 2020, the attackers take the next step. They finalize a second payload, Sunburst, the actual espionage tool, and hide it within the Trojanized Orion software. It was genius, it was devastating, and it was signed, digitally authenticated by SolarWinds itself. In March of 2020, while the world was focused on the chaos of COVID, while families adjusted to lockdowns, while office towers stood hollow, while home routers struggled to shoulder the new weight of global commerce, SolarWinds shipped the tainted update, version 2019.4, HF5. It was deployed to thousands of customers, government agencies, intelligence networks, Fortune 500 giants, from the U.S. Department of Treasury to Microsoft. All of them unwittingly opened the door. And that's when the ghost entered. The brilliance of Sunburst wasn't just in how it infiltrated, it was how it stayed hidden. The malware would lie dormant for up to 2 weeks. Then, like sleeper cells obeying a silent countdown, it would activate, randomized, staggered, perfectly timed to avoid suspicion. It blended in with normal traffic. It communicated using DNS, one of the oldest, most trusted parts of the internet. It watched, and it learned. And then it moved. Lateral motion across networks, privilege escalation, data access, each step slow, surgical, invisible. From spring through fall of 2020, the attackers navigated through the digital hallways of some of the most secure systems on Earth. No one knew, or rather, some had suspicions. By August, whispers of strange behavior surfaced at a few federal agencies. A discrepancy here, a misfired authentication there. But there was no smoking gun, no signature, no breach alert. Just shadows where clarity used to be. And then, in November 2020, the hunters became the hunted. FireEye, one of the most respected cybersecurity firms in the world, discovered something unnerving. Their own red team tools had been accessed, not sold on the dark web, not deleted, not leaked, accessed. But how? They launched an internal investigation, turning their forensics inward, peeling back the layers. What they found would lead them unknowingly to uncover one of the most dangerous and far-reaching cyber espionage campaigns in modern history. But we're not there yet. The system had already been breached, the infection was already spreading, and the world still had no idea what was coming. Given the scale, the scope, the complexity, do you think it's realistic for large enterprises or national CERTs to detect tampering from a signed and verified update from a trusted vendor? Do you think we've learned the lessons from SolarWinds, or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes again and again?
Yes, I think we learned that we must do it in a small environment, to see, to check, and then continue, not to immediately implement it or immediately update. We cannot afford the outcome of a failure. The outcome of one failure like that is huge. So let's be more prudent, more humble, and check things before we go forward with big scale.
So we all know that it's not a question of if you'll be breached, but when. What's the key thing you would suggest CISOs prepare for in advance when dealing with a supply chain breach like this that leads to total system collapse, leaving you in a situation where you need to reach out to vendors, to customers, to offsite support teams, but all of your critical contact info and communications are now suddenly offline?
You have to do the connectivity before. You have to be in a situation that you have friends all over the world, that you have names and phone numbers all over the world. So you can, in this situation, not search for the phone number of the CERT of Indonesia. You have to have the name, these 2-3 people in any CERT, in order to contact them, because sometimes, because of the hours, they may be sleeping. They may be only waking up. They may be at the end of the day. So you have to say, I'm Alberto from Israel. I have a big issue. I need your support. Never mind, excuse me for the hour. And then you begin.
So we talked about praying, certainly a very important skill for every CISO to have. Talk to us a bit about the importance of visibility and situational awareness in the moments following a breach. How do you begin creating order from chaos?
I will have to know what happened. I will have to know details, who is infected, how much is the infection, and what is the damage in 1 or 2 places. It's enough for me. The moment I see that it's more than 20 locations, I know that it's spread. Then we have to begin to work fast in order to reduce the damage.
Act 3, the turning of the lens. In cybersecurity, there's an old saying, everyone gets breached. Not everyone finds out. FireEye found out. It began with a flicker, a log entry that didn't add up, then another, a pattern just shy of a pattern. And for a company whose business was finding needles in haystacks, this needle was exquisitely well hidden. But it was there. FireEye's red team tools, digital lockpicks used to simulate attacks, had been accessed. Not destroyed, not leaked, just copied. And whoever had done it knew exactly what they were looking for. An internal task force was launched. The company turned its tools inward, scanning its own networks, investigating its own employees, rechecking its own assumptions. The hunt was personal now, and slowly, the picture came into focus. The attacker hadn't breached FireEye directly. They'd come through the supply chain, through SolarWinds. The realization was staggering. SolarWinds wasn't just a vendor. They were infrastructure like plumbing or power or oxygen. Their Orion software sat at the center of IT systems around the globe. And if Orion was compromised, then so was everything downstream. Thousands of customers, federal agencies, intelligence networks, the private sector, all of them unknowingly wide open. FireEye reached out to the U.S. government, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and a newly formed alliance called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA for short. Together they began the process of unwinding what would soon be named Sunburst. But as they traced the malware's behavior, its tactics, its traffic, its timing, something else emerged. This wasn't criminal. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about destruction. This was espionage, patient, strategic, state-sponsored. And whoever was behind it, they were still out there. Given your experience with ICS, what made SolarWinds so dangerous for industrial and government systems? What was the biggest mistake you think leadership made here?
That nobody was thinking that it can happen. Say 95% were not prepared to this kind of attack. They were sure that the updates are okay, that nothing will happen, and because they were doing the same thing every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, not thinking that it may be this time a big attack. Let's take the event, if you remember, a few months ago of CrowdStrike. So many entities update without checking and stop working. Flights were stopped, schools, hospitals. Because of what? Because of not planning the update. If you are planning the update and you are ready to give respect to the enemy, give respect to the hackers, they are smart, they know what they are doing. Give them respect and then you will be able to resist.
So I've heard you mention complacency, doing the same thing in regards to security again and again and expecting different results. You also mentioned underestimating the skill and sophistication of your enemies. What role does human nature play in future threats, do you think? Will we continue to be the weakest link in our organization's armor?
Take a red light, okay? Every day, all over the world, people are crossing red light and some of them are having accident. And we ask them ourselves, how come it happened again? Why? Because it's human nature. We do not believe things will happen to us. No, it will happen to my neighbor, but not to myself. And this is one of the crimes of the human factor. We have to be more humble.
So SolarWinds certainly made us aware of the security exposure that blind trust in our vendor supply chain dependency creates. What are you doing to prevent this sort of supply chain security breach today?
Nothing is entering immediately to our systems. Always we'll have, never mind, not only in ICL, in all places that are respect themselves, they will take a small environment, they will check the things before continue. We'll see if there is any connectivity to the internet. Because in any attack, they want to have connectivity to the internet and to build up this malware. The moment you see some activity that it was not supposed to be there, suspect it. Don't think, no, it's normal. No, suspect. Check it. Verify it. If you see that it goes to C2, stop it. It can happen. Be ready to have every possibility.
Act 4. The Dominoes Fall. November 2020. FireEye's revelation was just the opening move. Within days, SolarWinds confirmed what no one wanted to hear. Their software had been compromised. The scale was breathtaking. Nearly 16,000 customers had received the poisoned update. Governments, corporations, critical infrastructure, everyone. The breach had gone viral. On December 8th, FireEye stepped into the spotlight. They publicly announced their breach. Unprecedented transparency in a world often shrouded in secrecy. Days later, the name Sunburst was born. The malware was no longer a ghost. It had a face and it had a name. The U.S. government moved swiftly. December 13th, an emergency directive ordered all federal agencies to shut down Orion immediately. This was a declaration of crisis, a digital red alert. The malware's command and control servers, the puppeteers behind the scenes, were seized by a coalition of Microsoft, FireEye, and GoDaddy. The fight had entered the public domain. The media dubbed it a cyber Pearl Harbor. Senate hearings were called. The breach wasn't just a story, it was a crisis of confidence. How had the digital defenses of the most powerful institutions on Earth been so thoroughly bypassed? Then the disclosures began to roll in. Microsoft revealed that attackers had viewed parts of their source code, but assured the public that no customer data had been stolen. The Department of Justice confirmed that hackers accessed thousands of employee email accounts. SolarWinds admitted internal weaknesses, from weak passwords to delayed vulnerability disclosures. Behind closed doors, fingers pointed. The breach exposed cracks in the fortress, lax security, ignored warnings, and the dangerous assumptions that software supply chains were safe. A former SolarWinds security advisor would later testify that repeated warnings and cybersecurity risks were often overlooked by executives. And in the wake of the chaos, a second, unrelated attack began exploiting SolarWinds vulnerabilities, opportunists seeking to cash in on the disaster. By mid-2021, the fallout was undeniable. The US government mandated zero-trust architectures. No longer could anyone be trusted by default. The breach had changed everything. But even as the dust settled, many agencies and companies remained in the dark about the full extent of their exposure. The truth was sprawling and complex, a puzzle still being pieced together. The breach had become more than an incident. It was a warning, a call to reimagine cybersecurity. So, after the breach is confirmed and the immediate response is underway, it's time to chat with those not-so-technical folks, the C-suite executive management team, the board of directors, and bring them all up to speed. Enact your BCP, your business continuity plan. Can you offer any advice in how to handle that sometimes challenging group of individuals?
Again, as before, you have to pray. Pray, the management has to pray, because the issue now is how to get out of this situation, because you are already under mess. You have to get out. You have to overcome. It's not easy. You have to prepare yourself to the different situation. One of them that you detect, one of them that you did not detect and it's over you, and then the infrastructure is more important. How the infrastructure is behaving to come back to life, BCP, how they are prepared themselves to raise the company back to work. So everything depends on drills, on practice, and on giving thought of all kinds of scenarios. If you will not practice in various scenarios, take home, for example. You want to protect home against, let's say, against criminal that will enter to your home. The analysis of all your windows, all your doors, all your walls, where they may be breached. And then you have a plan. But if one door is opened or breached, you have to have a plan how you overcome this situation. So at the end of it, it tends to professionalism and planning and practicing. Because in cyber, everything can happen.
So a lot of CISOs are noticing these days that these long dwell time attacks are seemingly becoming far more common. Why do you think they are so hard to spot? What would you attribute that to?
Because we have so many logs, so many events every day, and you do not believe that something will happen.
The issue is something with your mind. You have to suspect anything that is abnormal. If you do not suspect, you say, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. When something will happen, you will say, it's nothing, and you will get it.
If you had to look at the, most common toolboxes that CISOs are utilizing these days, are there any detection practices that you think are being underutilized, something that we think we should be considering that we're not, maybe a method you employ that you think would significantly strengthen our defenses?
You have to have multiply system that gives you the alert. If you have alert from one system, probably the SOC will not react, Security Operations Center. If you have alert that come from 2 layers of defense, then they say something happens. So always have 2 layers of defense on each system with kind of something that touches each other.
Act 5, The Reckoning. As 2021 dawned, the world sought answers. Who was behind the breach? And how deep did the damage run? On January 11th, the US government broke its silence. The attack was attributed to a Russian state-sponsored group known in the shadows as APT-29, also called Cozy Bear, a well-oiled espionage machine, patient and precise. Microsoft confirmed the attackers had viewed portions of its source code, but stressed no customer data had been compromised. Meanwhile, SolarWinds faced intense scrutiny, not just from regulators, but from a global community shaken by the breach. Weak passwords like SolarWinds 123 became a symbol of negligence. Delayed vulnerability disclosures became a cautionary tale about the costs of bureaucracy in cybersecurity. In congressional hearings and security conferences, experts dissected every misstep. Testimonies revealed that internal warnings went unheeded, that executive leadership underestimated the threat. The breach was not merely a technological failure, it was a failure of culture, communication, and accountability. As the year progressed, the breach catalyzed a seismic shift in cyber policy. The US government mandated zero-trust security models, a radical departure from legacy practices. Software supply chain security became a top priority worldwide, and private industry rushed to patch the vulnerabilities that had allowed the invisible invaders to slip through. Yet the story was far from over. By late 2021, many organizations still grappled with the fallout. The breach had become a case study in vulnerability, a stark reminder that no system, no matter how fortified, was impervious, and the world's digital landscape had forever changed. In 2025 and beyond, the SolarWinds breach serves as a catalyst, fueling innovation in cybersecurity, inspiring legislation, and sharpening the focus on trust in the digital age. It's a story of stealth and shadows, but also of resilience and reckoning. Because in the ever-evolving battle for cyberspace, the only certainty is vigilance. What do you think the SolarWinds breach taught CISOs about how to handle relationships with supply chain vendors? Do you think it's made them a little paranoid or just cautious enough?
Design a good process how you enter things to your organization and to check things. To understand that even if it's come from SolarWinds, if it's come from Microsoft, suspect it. Don't think that if it's come from a big company, SAP, then it's safe for sure. No, they may be damaged exactly like small companies. Because when you think that you know everything, then you fail.
Do you think most enterprises or national certs would handle a breach like this better today than they did back then?
No, I think that still it will stay 30 to 40% maximum of the state that will be ready and will be react good, and 60 to 70% that will not react good because they are not preparing themselves enough.
So I think one of the things that makes the role of CISO such an interesting career is that it's so multifaceted. It calls on you to master so many skills, and one of those is kind of getting under the skin or inside the head of your enemy, knowing your enemy. What advice would you give other CISOs in terms of sort of that foundational piece of information they should consider when profiling or sizing up their enemies?
I think that we have to realize that there are bad people in the world, and they are organized crime, that they are smart and they know what they are doing, and they insist to succeed, and you have to be better than them. Otherwise, you will lose.
All right, so our final question is perhaps the most obvious one, but do you think we have really learned the lessons of SolarWinds as an industry? Are we in the same spot in terms of our defensive tactics and response strategies, or are we miles ahead of where we were before? Would you say that we've learned the necessary lessons?
We are not in the same spot. We are much better. But doesn't say that everybody is much better. It says that 40% or 30% of the state understood that they have to do activity in their state to raise the cyber culture. We are not speaking about awareness, we're speaking about culture. To arrive to a situation that you have a culture of cyber in the UK, cyber of culture in the United States. The moment you arrive to a cyber culture, then you know that you can deal with SolarWinds.
Mr. Alberto Deto Hassan, thank you so much for being our co-host today on the CISO Signal. Really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
The SolarWinds breach wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a calculated infiltration that unfolded over months, hidden within trusted systems and validated software. It exposed not only the vulnerabilities of a single company, but the fragility of an interconnected digital ecosystem where trust is the most valuable and most exploited currency. For security leaders, it was a harsh reminder. The adversary doesn't always announce their arrival with fanfare or brute force. Instead, they embed themselves in the supply chain, in the shadows of code, patiently watching, learning, and waiting for the perfect moment to move. The consequences reverberate beyond stolen data. They shake the foundations of operational integrity and national security. This is a story not just of a breach, but of a breach in confidence between vendor and customer, between system and operator, between assumption and reality. As we move forward, the challenge is clear: to build defenses that anticipate stealth, to question assumptions long held sacred, and to accept that the perimeter is no longer a line, but a shifting landscape of trust. Because in the world of cybersecurity, the greatest danger often lies not in the obvious, but the obscured. And so we remain ever vigilant and always listening for the CISO Signal. All episodes are based on publicly available reports, postmortems, and expert analysis. While we've done our best to ensure accuracy, some cybersecurity incidents evolve over time, and not all details have been confirmed. Our goal is to inform and entertain, not to assign blame. Where facts are unclear, we've used cautionary language, and we always welcome your corrections. Thanks for listening to the CISO Signal.